Joining me on the news track now, Tamar Schwarzbard, spokesperson in the Israel Ministry of Foreign Affairs. With us also on this broadcast is Ido Heyman. This is the brother of Inbar Heyman, who's been kidnapped by the Hamas. Let me go across to Tamar Schwarzbard, who joins us on this broadcast. Tamar, we're seeing the kind of pressure that's being made to bear by these families of the hostages. They're coming together and trying to tell Israel government to give them information about what's happening, to negotiate with the Hamas, to try and find a way of getting their loved ones back. And this is quite inevitable and totally understandable, because ultimately their loved ones have been taken hostage and are missing at this moment. How is the government in Tel Aviv looking at all these pleas and the kind of global attention that these are receiving at the moment, Tamar?
So first of all, thank you so much for having me on the program here today. In terms of the hostages, I want to start by talking about a little 9-year-old boy named Ohad. Ohad turned 9 today. He's currently being held in the Gaza Strip, not having much of a birthday. He's away from his friends. He's away from his family. We don't know where he's being held. We don't know whether he's alone, whether he's in a dark room. And I want to take this opportunity to wish Ohad a happy birthday, to pray for his release, and also ask each and every one of you to pray to bring him home. Right now, there are more than 200 Israeli civilians being held in the Gaza Strip. We're talking about children, we're talking about toddlers, we're talking about Holocaust survivors, we're talking about parents. And our job and mission in this moment is to make sure that we are able to bring home every single one of those individuals. We will do whatever we have to do and take every measure possible to allow for their safe return. I want to just remind people that when we're talking about Hamas, we're not talking about freedom fighters. We're talking about individuals who are no different than ISIS. A lot of journalists today in Israel participated in a private briefing where they saw some of the GoPro footage that Hamas terrorists filmed while going into Israeli communities, executing people left and right, murdering babies, burning people alive. And we have to understand that these are the individuals that we're dealing with, and these are the individuals that people are asking us to negotiate with. So, of course, I don't want to comment too much on negotiations, but everyone should know we are doing everything we can to bring each and every one of the hostages home.
I was seeing some of the reports filed by our correspondents on the ground. They were speaking to the families of the hostages who say that the government in Israel isn't talking to them, that they've been left to fend for themselves, which is why they're having to mount their own campaign, that these are our people and the government should do whatever is possible to try and bring them back.
So first of all, my heart is completely with the families of these individuals. I understand where they're coming from. I cannot imagine going through that experience myself. These are their children. These are their parents. These are their brothers and sisters. The government is directly in touch with many of the hostages. Right now, in fact, many of the families of the hostages are currently appealing to different media outlets around the world to garner support to bring their loved ones home. And as I said before, we will continue to do whatever we can and to work around the clock to make sure that these innocent people are brought home.
What do you think of the manner in which 2 American nationals, 2 women, were released by the Hamas over the past several hours? It seems to have been done as quite a clever ploy to bring attention to the fact that the others could potentially also be released if there is a proper conversation with the government in Israel, laying out conditions. So they're basically trying to up the ante and say, okay, here are some levers that we have control of, the chips that we can play, let's have a conversation. I think that's what the Hamas very cleverly are trying to achieve.
Look, Hamas is, cosplaying right now as a humanitarian organization. I think the world has seen exactly who they are in the past 2 weeks. For years, we've been trying to warn the world about the cruelty of Hamas. And I think it's very, very, very sad that it took images of, babies being burned alive and beheaded and shot in their beds for the world to understand that we are not talking about freedom fighters. We are talking about sadistic animals. Honestly, animals is even a compliment. We're talking about sadistic, evil individuals who are no different from ISIS. I'm very happy, and Israel is very happy, that 2 of the hostages have been released. But we also know there are more than 200 individuals who are away from their families, who might be tortured, who have undergone some of the most horrific experiences well beyond our imagination. So Hamas can continue pretending to be a humanitarian organization, but they've proven over the past 2 weeks that they are no different than ISIS.
Let me go across to Yuli Edelstein, Member of Parliament, Chairperson of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee in Israel. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Edelstein. We're seeing that this hostage crisis and what Israel should do, should it negotiate with the Hamas? We've seen Israel in several instances in the past negotiate with terrorists and try and see how they could bring Israeli citizens back. The big difference this time is that there are 200 plus hostages dispersed in different parts of the Gaza Strip. How are you looking at this big question as the chairperson of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee on whether or not Israel should, given the fact that 2 American women have been released, should it or should it not negotiate with the hostage takers?
I think we're talking about 2 totally different things. Yes, in a barbaric act, Hamas kidnapped, took hostage over 200 people, some of them, by the way, foreign citizens, some of them, it's terrible even to say that, but babies, elderly people, pregnant women, you name it. And we have to do everything in our power to release the hostages. I'm not going to discuss how exactly we're going to do it, but I can promise you that we are doing everything in our power in every possible way to make sure that the hostages come home as soon as possible. It's quite obvious that Hamas is not a partner for these negotiations. On the other hand, I think that if we want to stay alive in our area, we must make sure that Hamas as a military structure stops existing. For that, we are being prepared, and we are right now, we've started already the military operation against Hamas. The goals set by the Security Cabinet of the Israeli government are quite clear. To get to the situation after the military operation, to get to the situation when Hamas has no military power and no political power in the Gaza Strip. Not easy to reach these goals, but these goals will be reached and the hostages will be back home.
Several of the families of those who've been taken hostage have come together. They're trying to build a movement, trying to rally public support, raising questions around why no one in government is talking to them, saying that they've been left to fend for themselves. How do you see all this play out, given the fact that in Israel there is a very strong sense of disillusionment with the Benjamin Netanyahu government, where a lot of Israelis feel let down, that their government, their military, their intelligence agencies didn't rise to the challenge and let them all down, and so many Israelis died?
It's quite obvious to us that we won't be lucky enough to have all the hostages in one place so that we will be able to release all of them through one brilliant military operation of some special forces unit. That's not the case. The hostages have been taken to different places around the Gaza Strip, as you've just said. It makes it difficult. We are very attentive to what the families of the hostages have to say. Having said that, I think that we have to still proceed with the military operation, taking into consideration the fact that we have over 200 hostages there in the Gaza Strip. Hamas already started his psychological terror. They already issued statements about the Israeli army killing most of the hostages through bombarding the Gaza Strip. They are playing all kinds of games with all of a sudden releasing a video of this hostage or that hostage. So on the one hand, we know whom we are dealing with. I think the whole world couple of weeks ago witnessed what these animals are capable of. And at the same time, we have to be very professional, let's put it this way, though it hurts terribly and the heart is aching, but we have to be very professional in our approach to the release of the hostages. And only if we act with, so to say, cold head, we will be able to reach the goal of the release of the hostages.